Bibles, want to follow along, you turn to Matthew chapter 26. That's where we're going to start reading in just a moment. This is a very important time of the week for us because it is a time where we get to remember Jesus together. I'm sure it's not the only time this week that we've thought about Jesus, at least I hope not, but it is a chance that we get to come together and have our mind directed at thinking about Jesus together. And that's an important part of what we're doing in this hour. When we come together and we to partake of this memorial, and this memorial was set up for us by Jesus himself. We follow the pattern that Jesus set for us when he established it. That's why I'd like to read for you Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 26. It says this, "And as they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to the disciples and said, 'Take, eat, this is my body.' Then he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, 'Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. But I say to you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine from now on until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom.' And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives." We partake of the unleavened bread because that's what Jesus used. That was the pattern, right? We partake of the fruit of the vine because that's what Jesus did the very first time when he established this. We take of it in this order because if you read all the accounts, it appears that the bread was offered first by Jesus and then the cup. We say a prayer before the bread and we say another prayer before the cup because that was the pattern laid out by Jesus. And as you continue to read in the New Testament, you'll read in passages like Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, that this was something that they partook of on every first day of the week. So we partake of it in every first day of the week because that was the pattern that was laid out by Jesus and the early disciples. That's important. It's also important that we understand the significance that Jesus gave us another pattern. And the pattern that Jesus gave us was the pattern of godly living. Jesus exemplified for us perfectly what it meant to walk in the Spirit and live in the Spirit. So when we study the fruit of the Spirit and we want to see the pattern for how that is lived out in life, you don't have to go anywhere else except the life of Jesus. And you will see this pattern displayed perfectly for us. As a matter of fact, in Acts chapter 10, Peter is at the home of Cornelius, and he's talking to Cornelius, who's going to be the first Gentile convert in his household, and he had invited some friends over. And I want you to notice what we looked about how important Peter was when we talked about how Jesus is our perfect example of being long-suffering, right? Because he had a front row seat to see Jesus being long-suffering. But look what Peter writes in Acts chapter 10, starting in verse 34. "And Peter opened his mouth and said, 'In truth I perceive that God shows no partiality, but in every nation whoever fears him and works righteousness is accepted by him. The word which God sent to the children of Israel, preaching peace through Jesus Christ, he is Lord of all. That word you know, which was proclaimed throughout all Judea and began from Galilee after the baptism which John preached, how God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power, who went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him." The part of the fruit of the Spirit that we're focusing on today in our Bible class is this idea of goodness. And Peter says, "I saw goodness firsthand." Jesus went about doing good and helping people. So I'd like to look at a couple examples of Jesus' goodness as we remember him this morning. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 8. I chose Matthew chapter 8. You could really open up any of the Gospels you wanted to almost any chapter, and you'd say, oh, there's the goodness of Jesus. There's the goodness of Jesus. But I chose Matthew chapter 8 because it comes immediately after the Sermon on the Mount. And I know some of you took up the challenge from Wednesday night, and you've been reading the Sermon on the Mount every day since then. So you've read it Thursday, you've read it Friday, you've read it Saturday, and maybe you've read it already this morning. So when, in Matthew chapter 8 and verse 1, it says this, but when he had come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. And behold, a leper came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Then Jesus put out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. Immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you tell no one, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Now we're going to do a very interesting exercise, which I would encourage you to do almost every time you open up a story about Jesus. We're going to go back and look at how Jesus perfectly lived out some of the principles he just got done preaching about. Okay? So we're going to look. He comes down off the mountain. He's already told them how to live. He comes down off the mountain, and he immediately begins to give them the pattern on what that looks like in real life. First, the leper comes to Jesus, understanding that Jesus was powerful, but still maybe not convinced he was good. Because he says, if you are willing, not if you are able. It doesn't seem like he has any doubt whatsoever that Jesus could do this. Maybe he has already seen some miracles. Maybe he's experienced somebody telling him what Jesus had done for them, so he knows that they can do it. The first thing that Jesus lives out perfectly is he lives out the golden rule. This man had not been probably touched for a while by anyone. And so Jesus reaches out and touches this man. In addition to that, he says, I am willing, be cleansed, and this man was immediately healed. So the golden rule, Jesus, I would want to be healed of leprosy if I had leprosy. I have the power to heal this man of leprosy. Surely I'm willing to heal this man of leprosy. And so he reaches out, touches the man, and immediately says, I'm willing to help you. You be cleansed. So that's the first thing Jesus does. Second, Jesus does not heal this man to get glory from men. Remember, that was a big part of the Sermon on the Mount. When you do good things for other people, whether it's charitable deeds or whether you're praying or whether you're fasting, don't blow the trumpet and get everybody's attention. Jesus doesn't stop on this occasion. There are crowds following him and say, all right, everybody, gather around. I am about to do something amazing. I want everybody to come here, and I want everybody to see how great I am and how wonderful I am as I heal this man. It's just a moment of time where he just says something very briefly to this man and touches him. As a matter of fact, Jesus is making this pattern so clearly to us that he goes the opposite extreme. He says, don't go tell anybody. You see, Jesus has shown us just as soon as he comes off the mountain, he has shown us how you can do good works, be seen by men, and bring honor to God, but you don't do the good works to be seen by men and get honor for yourself. You see how amazing that is? That he's able to do something good with the right motive, and God gets the glory and the praise for what he was able to do. Third, Jesus told this man to keep the law. Go back to Matthew chapter 5 in that great sermon. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. I think this is maybe one of the most significant parts of this entire sermon as far as telling us what this sermon is all about. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. Do not think I came to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, One jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Now listen to this. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Wow. So when Jesus tells this man to go to the priest and give the lawful sacrifice, he is fulfilling the exact thing that he taught in that passage is you need to teach people to keep the law as it is. And Jesus is doing that perfectly on this particular occasion. Now, Leviticus chapter 14 tells us a little bit about that law. We're not going to turn back there. I'll just summarize a little bit of it. Once they were clear of leprosy, they presented themselves to the priest. The priest would examine them to make sure that they were clear of leprosy, and they had to offer a smaller sacrifice, consisted of offering 2 birds, killing 1 bird. The blood from that bird was put on the leper and the other bird, and then the other bird that wasn't killed was let to go free out in the wild. The leper was allowed back into the camp, but was not allowed back into his tent. 7 days later, if he was still free from leprosy, the priest would examine him again. He would shave his head, he would shave his beard, and he would shave his eyebrows. And then the priest would declare that he was free from leprosy. Now he could go and have his normal case of life again, be back in his normal life with his family and his friends, and be touched and be hugged, and everybody could welcome him back completely. Does that appear to you maybe to be some of the smaller elements of the law, some of the details of the law? And Jesus says, do that. I mean, he just got off the mountain, right? He just got off the mountain, and he's already showing people exactly what the message looked like as it is lived out in real life. Most of the time, this testimony that he's referring to, a testimony to them, was the testimony that the priest would give on the leper's behalf to the community. So in other words, the community is sort of distraught a little bit about this person being let back in the camp, right? You don't want somebody with leprosy, if they still have leprosy, to be back in the camp, let alone back in the house. And so you have to trust that the priest is doing everything according to the way he should, and he pronounces this person clean. So when the priest says he's clean, everybody could say, all right, there was a pretty strict method by which it was determined if he was clean or not, and that was followed perfectly. That was God's method. Now we know he's clean. We can accept him back. So it was the priest's testimony on behalf of the leper that he followed all the steps that he was supposed to according to the law, and he is now declared to be clean. But I want you to think about this for a second. On this particular occasion, because it is Jesus and what's about to take place, it was also a testimony to the priest that the Christ is here. So Jesus sends this man to the priest. And could you imagine this conversation? The priest knowing that this man has had leprosy, and now suddenly, out of nowhere, it is healed, it's gone, and it's not just going away, it's not just healing, it is completely gone. And I'm just going to ask you a little bit to use your imagination. This isn't given to us in the actual text. We don't know how this conversation went. But I can't help but imagine the priest was really looking over this guy, right? And looking at wherever these sores were, wherever this leprosy had made manifest, and not seeing a single evidence. And then what do you think he would want to do? How did this happen? That's what I would ask. How did this happen? You just had leprosy yesterday, or it would have been a walk from Capernaum down to Jerusalem. But you just had leprosy. And he says, it's this man, Jesus. I know this is going to be shocking, but he's been doing all kinds of miracles up there in Galilee. He has been performing miracles. He teaches like no one else has ever taught. He's been doing good, and I knew he could heal me, and I just went up to him and asked him to heal me. He touched me, and he said, be cleansed, and immediately it was all gone. Priest could look, and for that 7-day period, maybe he checked back in with him. At the end of 7 days, maybe that leprosy is going to come back. And at that point, see, the priests were actually looking for the Messiah, and one of the signs of the Messiah was the ability to heal even leprosy and cast out demons, as we know from what was said in Acts chapter 10. Well, the priest might have said, how much money did he charge you for this? Anybody that has that much power has got to be rich, right? And the leper says, he didn't charge me anything. See, he teaches that money isn't important. He teaches in his teachings that if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, that God knows the things that you need. He doesn't even have a house or a place to lay his head. He is completely living out perfectly, this man is, the very challenging things that he is teaching. If you continue on through Matthew chapter 8, you will find out that he heals the centurion's servant. He heals Peter's mother-in-law. He heals many people at once the sun goes down. Matthew also records in the same chapter how he calmed the sea and he cast demons out of 2 men. Jesus, as Peter told Cornelius, truly did go about doing good. We'll look at another example or two of Jesus doing good in our Bible class. But I really wanted us to focus our attention today on not only the importance of the pattern that we have in front of us, because we have talked about that over and over and over again, rightfully so. But I want us to take a step back and just remember an important pattern that Jesus left was how to live in the Spirit and how to walk in the Spirit and what it means to possess the fruit of the Spirit and what it means to be good and to have this attribute of goodness. As we continue to partake of this memorial, think of how Jesus lived perfectly. Every principle he taught on the mountain in that incredible sermon. Maybe you want to think about the words Jesus spoke when he said, "But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even tax collectors do the same? Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect." Think about how Jesus perfectly lived out those words that he spoke on that particular occasion. The only begotten Son of God taught others, including us, how to be sons of God, how to be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect, by coming down to this earth and showing us the Father. In the same setting, Jesus told his disciples, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." He is the perfect example and pattern of what the Father is like. And so as we continue to remember the Lord right now, remember that he is our perfect pattern of goodness because he is the perfect pattern of his Father who is good.